Well, hey, welcome back. And if you're new, welcome. And if you're returning, welcome. Anyway, I guess we'll now do this for a fourth season, as it's time for another episode of... Hi there, it's Brett Hornby here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, and welcome back to the fourth season of my Calgary Hitmen game recaps. I call this one Season 4, Episode 1. I'm just going to call this one my Calgary Hitmen 4, as this will be a fairly, quick and vanilla game recap video, because this is just the preseason. However, we're hoping that this season will be more normalish than usual, having a preseason, having a 68 game season, and then have this thing called playoffs and a Memorial Cup. That's definitely something that has been lacking in the Western Hockey League and junior hockey the last couple seasons. Because I don't know about you, I'm getting tired of this BS, and I am suffering from burnout and COVID fatigue. So hopefully, at least this season, the Calgary Hitmen will have a more normalish season. And in fact, once they get into the regular season, they'll actually get to be playing back in their regular home in the Scotiabank Saddledome. As last season, they were pushed out to the Seven Chiefs Sportsplex because they had the Calgary Flames, and actually temporarily the Stockton Heat were playing in the Saddledome, so the Hitmen were kicked out. They got to keep the COVID requirements going. So hopefully Season 4 will be as normal as possible. So before I get into my notes and recap how the 4 games went for the Calgary Hitmen in the preseason, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fan's journey, just make sure you hit like and subscribe, and I'll have my other social links down in the description below. And the other thing I've been doing with all my other game day recap videos is there'll be timestamps in the description below, so if you want to jump to any particular game or segments. So with all the introduction out of the way, let's start recapping how the preseason went for the Calgary Hitmen. So the first game of the preseason for the Calgary Hitmen happened on Friday, September the 17th, as the Calgary Hitmen had 2 weekend sets. First one was with the Red Deer Rebels. Second set was with the Edmonton Oil Kings. So the first game was against the Red Deer Rebels as they were on the road. This was at the, now I guess they call it the PV Mart Centrium. That was a 7 p.m. puck drop, and actually there was no scoring to report in the first period. And the Calgary Hitmen had a late 5-on-3 power play. So in the first period, so that's really all I can say about the first period. This one, didn't get to watch any of the games. I think there was I think the WHL Live has another live package that you can watch how to market games, but the fact that there were no fans in attendance for any of these preseason games, and the fact that it was just based on, reading the summaries, it was really very vanilla how I recapped all these games. So anyway, going to the second period, all the scoring happened in the second period, and the Calgary Hitmen started off the second period by taking a couple penalties of their own while on the power play. When it comes to the Red Deer Rebels, they opened up the scoring just before the 7.5 minute mark. It was Kale Uchas who scores to make it 1-0 for the Red Deer Rebels. Red Deer Rebels got 2 more goals in a 2.5 minute span. First it was Jace Isley at 15-14, and then Kale Uchas again got a second of the game just past the 7.5 minute mark. So Red Deer had a 3-0 lead after the second period. Third period, there actually was no scoring. As I mentioned, all the scoring happened in the second period. So it was 3-0 for Red Deer as they take this game. I just don't think I can highlight the third period is when I was reading the summary, there must have been some rough stuff that happened at the 12:59 minute mark of the third period. Several penalties were dished out. So ultimately, Red Deer won the first game 3-0, and Calgary outshot Red Deer 34-29 for this road game. So for the Calgary stats, it was Evan Bonaventura who had 20 saves on 23 shots, and then Braden Peters, who came in the final minute of the second period and played the rest of the third period, made 12 saves. So that was all I have for the Calgary stats. There was no offense, obviously, being shut out. The Red Deer Rebels, it was Kale Uchas who had 2 goals, and it was Jace Weir who had 2 assists, and then it was Chase Coward who had 34 saves for the Red Deer Rebels. So that was game 1. So game 2, this happened on the next night, on Saturday, September the 18th, as once again the Calgary Hitmen were taking on the Red Deer Rebels, although the Calgary Hitmen were at home, but they were playing at the Siksika Deerfoot Sportsplex at Siksika Nation. That was a 7 p.m. puck drop, as the Calgary Hitmen were continuing their relations with the First Nations. That's the theme, and I know that at the Calgary Stampeders game, when we played against the Montreal Alouettes, it was the Good Neighbour game, sponsored by the Calgary Hitmen. They had a Good Neighbour jersey, which maybe they'll play that, wear that throughout the season, which had the Calgary skyline, but this is just another home game that the Calgary Hitmen were playing outside of Calgary for the First Nations. So let's say second of back-to-back. Calgary actually opened up the scoring with Tristan Zandy, who scored at the 6-minute mark of the first period to make it 1-0. Then Red Deer got 2 goals later in the first. First, it was Arshdeep Valians past the 13.5-minute mark, and then Fallon Millen just before the 17.5-minute mark. So Red Deer took a 2-1 lead after the first period. Also, Red Deer outshot Calgary 15-9 in the first period alone. Outside of that, second period, Red Deer added to their lead, as it was Carter Ashton who got a goal past the 16-minute mark on the power play. Red Deer now had a 3-1 lead, and that was the score after the second period. Third period, Red Deer added 2 more goals early in the third period. First was the second of the game by Archie Baines. This happened just before the 3-minute mark, and then 8th in the whirlwind, just past the 6.5-minute mark. So Red Deer took a 5-1 lead at that point, and ultimately won this game 5-1. Red Deer also outshot Calgary 39-23 overall. So when it comes to the Calgary stats to highlight, it was Jack Benotton who made 22 saves on 25 shots, and he played the first and second period. Well, it was Braden Peters who made 12 saves on 14 shots. He played in the third period. And then when it comes to the Red Deer stats, Archie Daines had 2 goals. Then it was Jake Isley who had 2 assists. And then it was Justin Mark who had 22 saves for the Red Deer Rebels. So that was the first weekend set in Game 2 for the Calgary Hitmen. So Game 3, this happened on Friday, September the 24th. Now the Calgary Hitmen have a back-to-back against the Edmonton Oil Kings. So this game happened at the Downtown Community Arena, 7 p.m. puck drop up in Edmonton. And then this was to wrap up the preseason with the Battle of Alberta. First period actually had no scoring to report, and nothing stood out for penalties either for this Battle of Alberta. Calgary had an edge in shots, 13-9 though, in the first period. Second period, both teams scored a goal. First, Edmonton got their first one of the game by Tyler Horseman at the 10:49-minute mark to make it 1-0, and that was also on the power play. Calgary got into penalty trouble in the second period, taking 5 penalties, including checking from behind, a double minor that Evans took, but on Mason Finley. This happened at the 11.5-minute mark after that goal, but Calgary was able to survive that, and as I said, that was their 5th penalty of the second period. Calgary did eventually tie it up late. It was David Asnaski just before the 17.5-minute mark, so we had a 1-1 game going into the third period. Now going into the third period, there was a fairly clean game, no goals to report, so first time this season. As I like to say, this one needs overtime. In overtime, Edmonton had a couple chances, but Calgary got the winner from Tristan Zandy, who got his second of the game. He scored at the 1:35-minute mark of overtime, so Calgary took this game 2-1. So Calgary also outshot Edmonton 29-28 overall, including 2-1 in the overtime. So looking at the Calgary stats, well, Tristan Zandy, he had both goals with 2 goals, and then Carter Yamichuk had 2 assists, and then Braden Peters made 27 saves. He played the whole game. And on the Edmonton side of the puck, it was Colby Hay, and keeping this as Colby with a K, because actually Edmonton has another goalie named Colby, he spells it with a C. He had 27 saves, so that was Game 3. Game 4, this happened the next night on Saturday, September the 25th, as the Calgary Hitmen were wrapping up the preseason, back-to-back with the Edmonton Oil Kings. Calgary was at home this time. At their home away from home last season at the Tsuut'ina 7 Cheese Sportsplex, that was the 7 p.m. puck drop. Calgary opens up the scoring, but it wasn't until just before the 17-minute mark for the Calgary Hitmen. It was Brendan Wynot, and he's actually not related to Cameron Wynot, to the Calgary Flames drafted this past draft, as Brendan Wynot actually spells two teams, T's in his last name, while Cameron only has one. So I'll throw that out there just for the season. And Calgary takes a 1-0 lead going into the second period. Going into the second period, Edmonton ties it up on the power play by Jackson Weeb just past the 9-minute mark. So we have a 1-1 game, and that was how things stood after the second period. Calgary and Edmonton had a scrum just before the 11-minute mark and came out with a power play, but did not score. That was still in the second period. Looked like Evan Toth was standing up for his goalie, so that's how I read the scrum that sued from the summary. Third period had no scoring, so for the second straight game, this one needs overtime. Calgary did outshot Edmonton 19-6 in the third period alone. Before we talk about what happened in overtime, both teams had chances, but ultimately, just like the last game, it was Calgary that ultimately scored the winner, as it was Zach Funk. He scores at the 2:57-minute mark of the overtime. So win another game 2-1 against the Edmonton Oil Kings. And Calgary outshot Edmonton 43-30 overall. They played 3-2 in overtime for Calgary. So ultimately, you could say the Calgary Hitmen ended the preseason with 2 wins and 2 losses, as they won 2 games against Edmonton, both in overtime, and they lost 2 games against Red Deer the weekend before. So now it comes to the Calgary stats. Well, Blake Allen stood out with 2 assists, and it was Jack Monotony who made 29 saves for Calgary. He played the whole game. And on the Edmonton side of the buck, well, it was Colby night, but this is the one that spells it with a C for Colby. Interesting, he has the last name that starts with K. He made 41 saves to the Edmonton Oil Kings. So that was the Game 4, and that was all the preseason games. Given the fact that this is just preseason, this is the next part where I usually take a look at the stats and standings, but given that I said this is only preseason, we'll bypass that for this particular episode. So let's just jump ahead and look ahead to what the first 6 games have in store for the Calgary Hitmen to start off the 2021-22 WHL season. So going to Game 1, this is on Friday, October the 1st, as the Calgary Hitmen open up their season on the road against the Lethbridge Hurricanes. That will be at the NMAX Center for a 7 p.m. puck drop. Game 2, which I actually am planning on personally taking that game in person for the home opener. I'll have to look at how many days it's been since the Calgary Hitmen actually played a game at the Scotiabank Saddledome, but on Sunday, October the 3rd, the Calgary Hitmen are at home against the Lethbridge Hurricanes, so that'll be 2 p.m. puck drop at the Scotiabank Saddledome. I do have some other plans that I want to do before the game, possibly catch the Experienced Van Gogh, so that's the home opener. Then Game 3, this happens on Sunday, October the 10th, as the Calgary Hitmen will be at home. This time they'll be hosting the Swift Current Broncos. That will also be a 2 p.m. puck drop at the Scotiabank Saddledome. And then Game 4, this will be on Friday, October the 15th, as the Calgary Hitmen will also be at home. They'll be taking on the Red Deer Rebels. That will be a 7 p.m. puck drop at the Scotiabank Saddledome. And then Game 5 on Saturday, October the 16th, the next night, the Calgary Hitmen will be on the road, as they will be taking on the Red Deer Rebels on the road at the PV Mart Centrium. And then Game 6, which will be all encompass the game recap in the next episode, which will be episode 2, the first 6 games of the regular season, as the Calgary Hitmen on Friday, October 22nd, they will be on the road taking on the Swift Current Broncos at the Innovation Credit Union IPLEX 7 p.m. puck drop. So that is what to look ahead for the Calgary Hitmen to start off the 2021-22 season. So yeah, that's all I have for this episode. It just was a preseason. Just a quick overview of the games happening and kind of give me a preseason to get myself getting back into recapping hockey games again. But it'd be nice that everything is starting to line up to be happening under normal circumstances, like preseason games actually being played at the end of September, going into October, and actually having a full season. Which also means that around after the Thanksgiving weekend, I will be back doing game recaps for the Calgary Flames as well, as the Calgary Flames, as of this recording, will be starting off their preseason, but they actually have 8 games, and the fact that after the Thanksgiving weekend, during the Thanksgiving week, I should say, especially after when I get back from Regina, catching the Calgary Stampeders on the road, we'll be back with my Calgary Flames game recaps to cover what the Calgary Flames did and what happened in the preseason for the Flames. So it's definitely great that hockey season is back. So all I have to say is if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, home of the Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, and Stampeders. I mostly do talk Calgary sports on my YouTube channel. I like recap games and stories. And another story that I recently did for the Calgary Hitmen is that my childhood favorite Flame, Joel Otto, has stepped down from the coaching staff, and former Flame Matt Stajan has now joined the Calgary Hitmen. So that's just another example of what I do on my channel. But I do a variety of non-sports content when I have time, which has been not much of lately, but I do have on my channel, like personal vlogs, attempt to comedy, and I also do share experience I'm on the road or at a sport event, and I do have some vlogging to go, which we'll see if I can get some time to get back into doing that. Now the hockey season is back and still in football season. But if that all sounds like it'd be interesting to watch, to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, you know what you do, just make sure you hit like, subscribe. I also have my other social links down in the description below. So like I say, let's go Hitmen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.